Yemi Cardoso and his team on what they have in the kitty for Naira to come back into a full force value as a currency, not just in Africa, but across the globe. Because recently the World Bank said among the top currencies that are doing very poorly around the world, Naira is among the top 10. That's quite shameful. But we just hope that the government can do something needful. Now this now brings us to the point of our discussion of today, evaluating President Trump's 100 days impact on global market. There's no saying that President Trump have not impacted global economy, global market in the last 100 days. A lot of things have gone out, from high tariff that he imposed, to geopolitical tension that he created, to trade war that he created between US and China and with other countries, including with Nigeria. There was a reiterated trade issues between Nigeria and US. When US imposed a 16% tariff hike on Nigeria, Nigeria retaliated with a 27% tariff hike. But that is going to be part and parcel of our discussion today, so that evaluating Trump's 100 days impact on global market with global commodity changing fate, like the challenge we are having in crude oil of today, is as a result of the issues coming from Donald Trump, with crude oil price going down. Including production is also going down. We'll be examining all this with my guest, Lawrence Taylor, who is based in Texas, US, to help us understand 100 days of Donald Trump. How has it really impacted global market? Mr. Lawrence, a very good day to you, sir. All right. Okay, can you unmute yourself?
Good morning, sir. Good to see you again. How are you?
Very great, and nice to be on the show with you once again.
Yeah, it's good to be your guest again. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you as a journalist and my perspective in the business world here in the United States, especially in the finance world. And hopefully we gain some benefits for the Nigerian audience.
Exactly. That's what we want, and that's your submission. Your perspective is quite interesting, that we need to borrow some lessons from and see how we can go forward. But first and foremost, how is the popularity of Donald Trump as we speak? Because I've been able to examine some polls, and I've discovered that the polls are showing a negative red for Donald Trump. But from your own angle, how is his popularity going?
Well, if you recall, our last month you interviewed me, and I told you my perspective, and it's not going to change. Basically, I believe he's been a showman. I mean, he's a reality TV show.
That's serious.
So he has not been able, either in the first term or in the current term, transition from that reality TV personality to the seriousness of governing, so to speak. And well, he does have a few supporters, his party, his fellow Republicans, especially the ardent MAGA Republican audience. So he's popular with them, but the majority of the American audience, he's not as popular.
Exactly. I think the polls that really show that is no more as popular as expected. But this takes me to the next question I need to ask. So in the area of economy, how are Americans coping, the citizen, residents, visitors, how are they coping with the current economic reality under Donald Trump?
Well, the truth is that his administration in just 100 days has had a very negative impact on the U.S. economy. The fact is that people are losing jobs who shouldn't be losing jobs. Prices are going up that shouldn't go. In fact, when he came in, one sector, which is a good indicator of the American economy, is the housing sector. I'm not a builder here, although I have my family business in Nigeria is in construction. I'm not in construction here. But housing, what they call housing statistics on new buildings, new homes, is down in America. In fact, the headline article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal spoke to that. And I believe I forwarded that article.
Yes, I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah. So it's that bad. And one of the key indicators of a bad economy is when construction goes down, especially with the influx of people who are trying to stream to the United States. And So you have to house people, be it an apartment, be it a home, and the construction industry is down. So that alone, that just, if you were to look at just that sector alone, that would tell the entire story of the state of the American economy at the moment.
Very interesting. Although you also sent an article to me, which I also go through. The auto industry is also having its own fate in the hand of Donald Trump. How is it like?
Exactly.
Because it's quite shameful that the auto companies are downsizing their workers. A lot of buyers who normally feed into the American auto are also being discouraged. So take us through that in that regard, sir.
If you recall, you interviewed me last month.
Yes,
and I told you, I gave you an example of, I just used one brand, Toyota. I think I gave you Toyota Camry.
Exactly.
That was the example I used. Before Donald Trump, you could buy a Toyota Camry at $25,000. Today, the same car, you buy in $35,000, $40,000. That is how bad it is. And so people are no longer, and that's just one, again, that's just one easy model that Nigerians can relate to because of the number of Toyotas on Nigerian roads.
Exactly.
That's why I chose that model last month, and I'm going to stick with that. So if you just use Toyota Camry, for example, as an example, that will tell you the state, and you extrapolate that to the overall auto industry. That will tell you why companies are laying off, because people are not buying cars like they were buying, say even in December or November, before Donald Trump took over. So the economy, housing, grocery prices, be it eggs, be it rice, be it whatever staple food people eat, be it buying a car, everything is down. People are losing jobs left and right.
Very interesting. When you talk about staple food, I could remember a friend of mine who is in US told me one time that with $100 you could buy a full goat. I don't know how much that is costing right now in the US. That was about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Using that $100 before Donald Trump, I could use $100 to buy groceries for 1 week. That's my house. That's just my home with me and my 2 sons, for example. But now $100 will cover half a week. So I need $200 to be able to have meals prepared. Again, this is just one household. I'm not talking about it. And if you want to extrapolate that to the general population, you can see how hard it is. There are more people going to what's called food banks now, even including people who are actively at work. Go to food banks, which is like non-NGOs that give away food stuff, because they can't afford groceries no more. That didn't used to be the case before Donald Trump took over. There were some, but not as much as they are now.
Very interesting. So, but let's take a look at some of his policy initiatives that he himself called for. For instance, a lot of people are arguing, like some of those articles that you sent to me that I go through, there have been an argument that it's like this tariff hike that he pushed forward will make him to derail from other policy initiatives like the tax cut that he plans to do when he came to power. What's your perspective on that?
Well, the truth is that the tariff is really what he thought he was going to do something that Ronald Reagan, a fellow Republican, couldn't do back from, I think I gave you that example 40 years ago. And that was the only other time that tariff was in conversation at the lips of any U.S. president that I can recall. Both in reading history, and then I think the next thing if you remember our last interview last month, the only other time that tariff affected a nation as much as it's doing now, it goes back to Hitler in the 1930s.
Exactly.
I think you
mentioned that
conversation.
exactly.
Yeah. So it's not a very popular economic theory. It's not a very popular financial theory to use, but because of, again, like full disclosure, I'm not a psychologist. Because of his of his ego, the fact that his name is in the print, in the newspaper, over TV, Donald Trump did this, that's all it's about, because he thinks that this is an extension of his reality TV show. That's the problem.
Exactly. But let's also take a look at one of his promises during his campaign and when he was sworn in. He talks about, calling for interest rate cuts. But as of today, many people are asking, he's like he's a loggerhead with the Fed banks of American chairman. Is quarreling with them over the interest rate. He's having issue with them. But from his campaign promises, that's what he promised. So what's your perspective on that? My
perspective is that he is very wrong. One, the Fed chairman, because in America, the Fed chairman is supposed to be independent.
Exactly.
Ironically, he appointed the current Fed chairman who served his 10-year term.
Exactly.
When the last time he was president. So that is somebody that he appointed. That almost everybody that he has appointed is so loyal and they worship him. But because of the independence of the Fed, the Fed chairman cannot bend to his wishes.
Exactly.
Secondly, what is there to cut? What is the rate? The rate has been cut to as low as it can be. So what else can he cut? Where is he going to cut from? If things were at 10%, you've cut it down to 2%. What else are you going to cut? Just to please one person? It's not possible.
Exactly, but if
it's not practical.
Exactly, but if you look at the argument of Donald Trump, he said for him, he's not ready to see inflation in America. But from all his indication of his policy, it's like he's bringing inflation by the back door.
That is exactly true. He causes the inflation and then he wants to go back somewhere to. And there's no balance. That is his main problem. There's no reasoning. There's no forethought. Even if he has good advisors, which I don't believe he has, he will overrule them because, quote, he's the president. Again, like I mentioned to you last month, I'm not a politician. I'm non-political, but I'm a very good observer, especially because of my business interests here in America. I have to pay attention to politics, but I'm not in politics.
Exactly.
So it's not that I'm against him or that I support him. It's just that some of what he's doing is impractical, and most of the problems we have in the economy could have been avoided.
Exactly. Now, talking about avoid some certain things in the economy of US, on one of the articles I also read, one of them argued about the protectionist policy of Donald Trump. When I went through that, I was like, wait a minute. Are we saying this protectionist policy has its own negative effect, even though the greater America that he campaigned for is here? So, in your own understanding, that protectionist policy that he is pushing for, is it good for the health of America, or is just another bamboozle way of doing a TV reality show on national scale?
I will use your word, bamboozle. That is what he is doing right now. You think he can bamboozle? There is a saying, I don't know, hopefully your audience can relate to it. There's a saying in America, it's like you putting a bull, bull with a long horn in a China, in a
Chinese
shop that sells, in a China shop, a shop that sells glass and fragile dishes. That when you put that bull in there and does his head, it's gonna break everything. Yeah, and that's what has happened. The economy was well set up. Biden, again, I'm not a Democrat, and let me disclose. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. I'm non-political, like I said. But Biden did such a good job, which people didn't appreciate. And now they are wishing that Biden has stayed on. They are wishing even Kamala Harris have done a better job campaigning on the strength of what they achieved to have won the presidency. They think some of what is happening now would have been avoided.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at one of the things that Donald Trump was hoping he could achieve within his 100 days. There's the $2 trillion saving cuts Elon Musk were putting in place as a plan to ensure that they save about 2 trillion waste in American economy. But what we are hearing right now is that, at least from Elon Musk's angle, they have been able to save about 150 billion US dollars. But 2 trillion is still very huge. So what's your perspective on that also?
My perspective is that government based on hypothesis is not a good thing. A lot of their policies are based on hypothesis. Yeah, and if you have to prove the hypothesis to be true, you're going to cause yourself, especially in a major economy like this, major problems, and that's what has happened. There was no sound reason, financial, economic, other than maybe political, this thing, to do some of what they're doing. But hey, I'm not an advisor to the president of the United States. I'm not in politics, but that's what we have. And the good news is that after another 2-3 years, he'll be out of office. But we have to enjoy the next 3 years.
Exactly. Enjoying the next 3 years of Donald Trump, particularly as questions are being waged right now that what will happen in the next 100 days. But let's leave that aside and also look at some of the issues globally now. For instance, in your understanding, how is the relationship with the US right now with China?
It's very bad. And the irony is that China has the upper hand, whether we like it or not. China has the upper hand. If you pay attention to the tea leaves, so to speak, tea leaves, because over the last 15-20 years, including Donald Trump's first term, China did some things, some economic policies that is not well known to the world, that they are prepared now to unleash if Donald Trump continues the way he's going. Yeah, but I'm not in China. I'm not. But I have resources in reading because I have to keep on. We operate in a global economy, global financial world.
Exactly.
But there are some things that if China were to unleash, Donald Trump will probably have to crawl and go to the chairman Xi and say, please stop it.
Exactly. Because the reason why I asked that question is because we already know that China is well prepared for this outrage of trade war. But on the other side, let's also look at Europe and Canada. I knew that Canada have gotten a new prime minister, and they're also very prepared. But we are very close to Canada. What is the experience like? What is happening between the new prime minister now and in relation to his economy with the US?
Well, the fact is that the new prime minister was elected specifically by the Canadian voters to oppose Trump. Yes. They wanted somebody who can stand up to Trump, and I think he is. He just took seat, so he's still even more than Trump is. But the fact is that two things have come out of that. One, American workers that lived in Canada, a lot of them are returning home because their visas are no longer, even though it's just next door. It's like, let's see, Nigeria and Cameroon. Imagine a lot of Nigerians working in Cameroon, and because of whatever political thing is happening, new president, prime minister, whatever, Cameroon says it makes it hard for Nigerians who are working in Cameroon. And then most Nigerians now have to return home. That's what's happening with America, United States, America, and Canada. A lot of the U.S. workers that went to Canada because it's cheaper to live and work in Canada are coming back home now, and they're having to deal with the harsh realities of the economy of America.
Exactly. Now, to the other nations that also...
And to add to that, fewer Canadians are coming to America for jobs. They are staying home.
That's great. But let's also take a look at the other perspective in terms of this discussion on a global scale. I could recall that one of the articles that you also sent, I read a line that said, 100 days of Donald Trump, Wall Street was in chaos. 100 days of Donald Trump, Wall Street was in chaos. A lot of people will be wondering what really happened. But Donald Trump is well known on Wall Street. So how come he doesn't know how to do the mathematics within the aspect of the American economy to keep Wall Street going smoothly?
Well, Wall Street has been in chaos since Donald Trump because of, again, what I was saying. There's no sound reasoning besides political and headline news to make sure his name is in print, like I mentioned, for some of the hypothetical theories that they have put forth. And so when there's no solid sound, this thing, and understand that the financial system is based on sound reasoning, and it goes back to history. And in the history of Wall Street, nothing like this has happened, where a president comes and wants to just cause chaos. And in the history of America, like I mentioned to you last month when we interviewed me too, this is the first time when the U.S. Treasuries, commodities, things that are backed by the full faith and some strength of the United States. This is the first time that less money is going into that as a hedge against economic trends. This is the first time. And a major cause of that is because China is a big stakeholder in American treasuries. And one of the, and like I told you that China, a few minutes ago, China has the upper hand. But some of the money that they would have pumped into the U.S. economy in treasuries, they are not doing it now. Yeah, they are not pumping money into U.S. real estate like they were doing before. Because now, price, like I said, housing is going up, and they are waiting till the prices fall before they'll put the money back into the house, into real estate in America. That's just one country, which happens to be like the number 2, number 3 economy in the world.
Exactly.
But they have a major stake in the U.S. economy.
Now, what about India? How is the relationship like with India? Because I also know that India also have a very stake in the American economy, supplying the ICT gurus and the rest of them. But with what is happening right now, one of the articles says something about impact on American export economic trade with other countries. What was your perspective on that, sir?
Well, India specifically, I cannot comment on because unfortunately I didn't. I read the article because I sent it to you, but yeah, exactly. I didn't research that as India specific. But I can be Canada, China specific, and I can be global. But what happens here is that, yes, there's a big marriage between Indian tech gurus and America. And most of the American tech companies, from Microsoft to Google, Indians have a big stake. Indian personalities and professionals have a big stake in it. In fact, some of the brain power behind U.S. tech is Indian. So I think that the India-U.S. relationship is not as rough as, say, Canada and U.S. or China and U.S. Exactly. So I think that is still stable because, again, the interface of human resources and technology is so much that you really can't tamper with that.
Exactly.
But here's one thing that has happened that as a result of this. Do you know that Amazon now, which is a Google company, by the way, Amazon now there's a line item when they send a bill to, say, somebody orders something and it's delivered, and you have to pay for it to be delivered. There's a line item now that says tariff. So, in addition to taxes, there's tariff. So, if your tax is $10 and your tariff is $20, is reflected in that invoice, and you have to pay on top of the cost of what you bought to be delivered.
Exactly. But let's go down to Africa and Nigeria respectively. In this regards, now with all that's happened, we have seen the effect, we have seen the consequence. But for African countries, Nigeria in perspective, what's your advice to the government of Nigeria and other African countries?
If you recall, my advice when we closed last month's interview was that I pray the politicians in Nigeria public officials, both elected and non-elected, will set aside their greed, whatever, because Nigeria, which is my homeland, my fatherland, my motherland, is blessed with resources. And if it's well managed, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. There's enough money in Nigeria that there should be no poor Nigeria. In fact, half of Nigerians shouldn't be poor. Let me not say there should be no. Half of Nigerians shouldn't be poor. Much less 90 or 95%, whatever the statistics now. So that 5% of politicians and public officials, forget your greed. Put your legacy in front of you. Your legacy. Okay, let the history books of Nigeria 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now say, this politician stood up for the people rather than their pocket or their bank accounts, and took on policies and enforced things that will make the life of the general population better, create jobs, have a good healthcare system, have a very good educational system. The majority of Nigerian population is youth. If you don't educate this youth, if you don't provide good education so that this next generation, when they come to take on leadership, they are well grounded to provide good policies, to lead a nation to do better. Nigeria, we could be suffering. We can be the other countries, superpowers like Nigeria and China. Like US and China will continue to take advantage of us. You know, and they will take advantage of us because they will place one or two politicians and loot the country and go use the resources that we already have. God bless us with, to make themselves wealthier than they are.
Exactly. Now,
whereas we could have kept it in the country.
Exactly. Mr. Lawrence, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. This will be the size of our interview with you, but very interesting at your perspective. You have made us to understand what is really happening within the 100 days of Donald Trump, you know, heading the affairs of American economy and government per se. Thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence.
You're welcome. It's always good to see you.
Exactly. So shortly we will still call on you. Maybe the next 100 days we'll call you before then or after then.
Sure.
All right, sir.
I'm always available. Just give me the advance notice enough time so I can clear my calendar. I can make arrangements. Like this week, I have a 4-day conference here in Houston that I'm attending. Today's day number 2, and right after this, I'm gonna deal with rush hour traffic and go to my conference.
Exactly. Right. So enjoy your conference and enjoy your stay all the way in Austin.
All right.